in order to, improve your bridges, improve your infrastructure, whatever it is the money might be needed for. So right about that time, I was taking my first student group to Chiapas, 1997, 98, winter, with my colleague Kate O'Donnell, who teaches at Hartland College in Oneonta. And unbeknownst to us, we were running a program. We wanted nothing to do with politics. We wanted nothing to do with the Zapatistas. We were not political. Unbeknownst to us, the organization working with the Guatemalan refugees had set it up so that the Zapatistas would have a chance to meet with us and maybe make a direct appeal for resources. And that happened. I found myself with half of these students sitting in a large room listening to Zapatista community tell their story. And by the time it was over, we were hooked. We were willing to go back and tell the story and sell cookies, to buy chickens, you name it. We were willing to do just about anything. So that's 98. 1999 in March, the things that were demanded by the Zapatistas in the peace accords had not happened. 1999, they decided, along with other groups in Chiapas, that they would have something called the Consulta Nacional on Indigenous Rights. And there would be an opportunity for people, Chiapanecans, to come and vote about whether indigenous rights should be part of the Mexican Constitution. And this went on San Cristobal de las Casas. This is particularly in San Cristobal de las Casas, in the plaza. At the same time, there were lots of international people there, and one of them was this young man named Oscar. And Oscar had a fire going in the plaza. This is a different picture of Oscar, but with incense burning. And I used to get up really early, and I walked into town, and he offered me a cup of tea, and we started to chat. So we got to know each other a tiny bit. Kate and I saw a march beginning a little bit after this, and being good anthropologists, we decided we should go and see where this march was going. And we decided we would follow the march. And we followed the march. Really bad move. To make a long story short, we wound up being busted for doing political activities on a tourist visa. Wound up in the immigration office, wound up expelled from Mexico. Wound up being defended by the Catholic Church because it was really important that they have these cases to set precedent. Wound up part of the story instead of just telling the story. And for me particularly, it was as though somebody had given me a passport because people said, "You're doing this for us." At that time, there were two communities that Natalia and Eduardo had introduced me to. One was Tulan, where they had learned to keep bees and make honey from the Guatemalan refugees. This is a picture of Tulan that one of the boys did. And the other was Cerro Verde. The first time I went to Cerro Verde, I was pissing and moaning about the fact that I had no grandchildren. My kids were not producing. I was never going to be a grandma. And they said, "Well, meet Belén." This baby was found at the age of 3 hours on the river bank. She was the product of what happens often in periods of low-intensity warfare, a rape of a Guatemalan girl by one of the military. And when the baby was born, the girl abandoned it. And 3 of the little boys from the village were out playing. They found the baby. They ran home. They got their grandma, who was a midwife. She came, she cleaned up the baby, she wrapped it in her shawl, she went home and she said, which of my daughters is going to be a mother again? And the baby went to Josefa, and as I said, I showed up about 2 months later, and they said, here is your granddaughter. So I became officially her grandmother, and her abuelita. We'll see Belén over and over again now. So that kind of cements a relationship with this community, with Cerro Verde. And it begins in 1998, 1999, and it continues as they develop their way of life in these two communities. The most important piece, as I said, education. And they wrote about what are the things that are important to them. What are the Zapatistas fighting for? They're fighting against the loss of rights that they never had, of strangers who own their oil and their electrical light and all of those things, and they're the poor and they're the forgotten. They're learning to write like crazy. You use your kids who can really write. They're writing about the things going on around them. They're trying to increase the value of their school system and their education. So in 1999, this was the school in Cerro Verde, but after a few trips by my students, this was the school in Cerro Verde. They were able to raise money selling cookies and whatever it happened to be, donate money for a new school, one-room schoolhouse, and the Zapatista curriculum and the books came from the organization. The teachers are taught in Realidad. They come back to the communities, and at the age of 15, you make a decision if that's what you want to be. If you want to be a teacher, you begin to train at the age of 15. These kids knew more about what was going on in the world than most of my students did. They were really connected with the rest of the world. So here's the student body. Balin's getting bigger here, you can see. Here's the student body of the Escuela Autónoma Miguel Hidalgo. And they're compatriots in Bethlehem. So they began a relationship with Palestinian kids, writing to each other. You know, the internet's a wonderful thing. Through me, back and forth, back and forth. So Palestinian kids knew what was going on with the Zapatistas. The Zapatista kids understood what was going on with the Palestinian kids. But the important thing about education was they got to construct their own curriculum. They learned about their own history. They learned about their own past. They learned about the environment, but these are things you're going to talk about. The second area was health. And as I said, this, even before the rebellion, they were beginning to put together their healthcare delivery system. Xerox Libro para Promotores de Salud, which is now been redone. It's an incredible book. Learning to mix herbal medicine, which you see in the bottom picture, with clinical medicine. He's taken her blood sugar so that they can talk about how to control diabetes, which is a big one in the communities. A system of clinics in which frontline healthcare takes place. Preventative healthcare. You know, it doesn't go too far in the clinic system, but at least people can come and see someone who has knowledge of childbirth and women's health particularly. There's a great deal of training with women's health. We did a healthcare team and went from clinic to clinic with a Cuban doctor here who was studying in the United States. and got to see how the different clinic systems ran. Prevention and outreach are some of the most important things. People know water, latrines, all of those basic things that keep you healthy. But there's a Zapatista hospital in a beautiful, beautiful place, San Jose del Rio. And in that hospital, surgeries take place. Women's health is attended to. Ultrasounds. Babies are birthed. Dental care takes place. It's quite an amazing facility. One of the things that we were able to do, my students and I, was to purchase a van with Wake Forest money, use it for our programs, and then leave it in Chiapas to take doctors from the city out to the farm, to the hospital, so that they could do surgeries. And they go out every 3 months and do surgeries in the hospital, totally volunteer. It's an amazing thing, but these docs have been in this since the late 80s. They're getting old. They're worrying about who's going to follow. How do we train the Zapatistas to do their own more intense medicine? Okay, subsistence. Let's go back to subsistence. One of the things that blew me away was seeing the breadbasket of the Zapatistas. Acres and acres and acres and acres of corn growing. Enough corn that they were able to send some to the Cubans when they needed it once. So they have a breadbasket, something that they know they can fall back on. Corn is the staple of life. And they are adamant about protecting that corn from genetically modified strains as much as you can possibly do that. Lots of good corn. So subsistence is really, really important, and there will be times when the municipal headquarters will say, we need everybody to plant another half hectare of corn this year.